Welcome to Blog Talk Radio in high fidelity.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio on September 14th, 2016. This is Andrew Fisher, your host, broadcasting Wednesdays from the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to expose the true and false nature of reality for what it is and what it isn't. On the show today, Dr. Ted Peters will, among other things, be helping to make science and religion cooperate. It seems like a paradox in and of itself, but Dr. Peters has tried to do that in many different ways. He is an ordained pastor at the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. I first heard about him when I watched a presentation of his on the UFO TV YouTube channel, and he's co-edited more than 24 books and co-authored them. Topics range from sin and evil to the future of God, and to points where the science and religion clash and cooperate. Translations have appeared in many different languages, and theological analysis is his specialty, as well as to uncover hidden spiritual dimensions behind secular language and secular thinking. And I believe this is him here in the queue here, area code 510. Dr. Peters, if that is you, I will get you on no later than 10 after the hour. First of all, I want to point out this is the first time I've been doing the show on Internet Explorer. For some reason, when I tried to call in using Google Chrome, it didn't work, and because I'm using Hi-Fi, so I can't call in on Skype, and on Mozilla Firefox, Mozilla on my computer for some reason seems to be having lots of problems. So hopefully you won't have any glitches. I'm calling it Internet Explorer. If we do have some sort of a glitch, I'll try calling in on Google Chrome, or just try calling in again. My cell phone is charging. I don't relish the idea of having a cell phone near my head for a long period of time, but if all else fails, I will use that. It should be charged up entirely shortly in the event that I have to use it. But first, before I get Dr. Peters on, we'll do the news courtesy of Alex Jones and company at InfoWars. And as usual, please give me a chance a moment here, folks, to refresh the page here to make sure that I get the most up-to-date news stories available. A lot of stuff about Hillary's health being in crisis and Donald Trump's life being in jeopardy, among other things. But anyway, first article here, Roger Stone says Hillary in meltdown mode, Trump will win. Direct contradiction to what I seem to recall hearing my guest say on the show last week. As the Clinton campaign spiraled downward, it becomes more evident that Trump will take the election. Jones talks with insider Roger Stone about the collapse of Hillary Clinton's campaign, and when I had John Nicholson on the show last Tuesday for a special 1-hour episode where he came back on the show to give updates on certain things, he said he thinks Hillary's going to win. He thinks there's going to be voter fraud. He thinks that she'll get away with it in the same way that Bush got away with it back in the 2000 presidential election. I hope that's not the case. I mean, how could anybody be so apathetic and so stupid to allow Hillary to win with all the problems and health crisis issues she's had? You just can't help but wonder if the Hillary that we are seeing is a clone or one of many clones that has been made of Hillary Clinton, and the real Hillary Clinton is probably at some satanic ceremony drinking blood or something, and the clone is out and it's having all sorts of clone defects. Can't help but speculate that, can you? Next article, Hillary Clinton sends a thank you letter to a, quote, slut who is proud of her sexually transmitted disease. I'm a slut, I have herpes, I still am a person who deserves respect. Hillary Clinton sent a thank you letter to a woman who gained notoriety for celebrating the fact that she was a slut and had contracted herpes, a sexually transmitted disease. This woman is Ella Dawson, who obtained a brief internet fame earlier this year when she launched a campaign backed by the hashtag Shout Your Status to encourage young women to embrace their STDs. Why exactly Hillary Clinton would send a thank you letter to this slut, I don't know. Paul Joseph Watson is the author of this article. You guys will have to check it out for yourself. You know, InfoWars would definitely put an article like this up there. Next article, just a general article, how history will remember Hillary the moment the internet took over the mainstream media. Is it too soon to write these words? Will the truth live only in our minds, or will it play out as fact in the world? Place their bets, I place mine. History will uphold Hillary Clinton's fame, but not for any of her deeds. Instead, she will become a marker for the moment when something called the internet took over the news. So much mainstream media cover-up of of her health issues. Because on the September 11th anniversary this past Sunday, she was seen collapsing at ground zero. And of course, in David Icke's Revelations of Mother Goddess documentary, Arizona Wilder, this was in 1998 when that documentary was made, said, "I saw Hillary Clinton before I knew she was Hillary Clinton." That was making reference to when Arizona saw political and corporate leaders shapeshift from human into reptilian form and vice versa. And don't know what you can make of that. I mean, that might have something to do with what I said about the real Hillary Clinton, the original, true, genuine Hillary Clinton, being at some satanic ritual drinking blood while the clone is out collapsing and having health problems. One of several clones, as Elena Kapolnik, one of my previous guests, would assert. Next article, shouldn't you be working? That's a quote there. Shouldn't you be working? Trump blasts Obama campaigning for Hillary. Why isn't President Obama working instead of campaigning for Hillary Clinton? Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump put President Obama on blast Tuesday night, severely criticizing the commander-in-chief for neglecting his role as an elected official. Well, when it comes to clones, you can't help but wonder if Obama is a clone. I remember Mr. Cat-Eye, who used to view the videos I watched, showing a video where he showed that the Obama that we saw did not have some sort of a scar or like on the back of his neck or back of his head that he's frequently known for having, and that suggests that the Obama we're seeing now is some sort of a clone. And Obama, Andrew Bashago, said that when he knew Barry Soetoro, which is Obama's real name, during the Project Pegasus program, he said that he was extremely bright and fully worthy of his Harvard education that he got. Well, he isn't acting anything like that. Can't help but wonder if it's a clone defect or something. And, well, while Donald Trump fights for us and goes to places where there's some sort of a crisis going on, natural disaster, whatever, Obama and Hillary don't do jack squat. So, way to go, Trump, for criticizing him. Next article, Russian TV, Putin warned globalists may kill Trump. Trump's life in grave danger, according to top Russian news anchor. Alex Jones looks at the latest from Russian TV on how the globalists may try to kill Trump as he is winning in the polls. Is he going to suffer the same fate as JFK? I don't know, but it's interesting. I was watching Ted Marr, who I had on my show twice during that conference that Ted Marr was at recently in Finland, where he was channeling JFK, Ted Marr was, and saying that JFK said that had he not been assassinated, we would definitely be in a much higher world, higher realm of consciousness than we are now. Sadly, that was not the case, and they had to assassinate him to prevent the world from ascending into higher consciousness. Because, well, can they pull off the same thing with Donald Trump? Well, maybe they may want to, but they obviously won't be able to get away with it as easily because people are waking up exponentially. Next article, Agenda 2030. UN plan to make Americans poor leaked. If you thought Agenda 21 was bad, wait until you see what the UN has planned now. There's a Venn diagram here of sorts, economical, social, and ecological circles all intertwined with equitable, bearable, and viable mixed in with those circles. You'll have to check out for yourself. But the UN Agenda to Destroy the West has been leaked, and Alex Jones breaks it down and exposes it. I guess it's something worth it's not really worth obsessing about. I've often said on this show I don't talk about conspiracy theories as much as I used to when I first started doing this show about 3 years ago. I'm trying to focus on more love-based stuff. Still do the news conspiracy-wise at the very beginning, just for the sake of current events and everything. With love being spread around this earth, I don't think we need to worry about this fear-mongering stuff as much as we used to back in the day. So watch it if you want. I mean, it's true and everything, but it's not worth obsessing about like maybe it was when people needed to wake up. Last article here. Prominent doctors Hillary has serious health problems. So thank you for saying the obvious. More and more medical professionals are coming out and telling the truth about Clinton. After weeks and months of InfoWars covering Hillary's failing health, doctors are finally beginning to come out and admit Hillary has serious health issues. Yes, thank you for stating the obvious. All right, here. So I got a couple of guests here in the chat. Glad to see you folks there. I believe this is Dr. Ted Peters in the queue. Let me get him on. Area code 510. Is this Dr. Peters?
It is, Andrew. Nice to be with you today.
Yes, glad to have you on, and very impressed with what I saw in that presentation on the UFO TV YouTube channel. I do have a couple of things to say about SETI and all. It may not be so cool at all, but hey, it's going to make for great radio conversation and all that. But there's a lot more to talk about besides SETI and all that. I guess I'll give you the chance to introduce yourself. I didn't get a chance to go over any of your honors. I did list them here on the video description, but you're more than welcome to go through that when I give you your little opening spiel here. You are a pastor and all that. I'm glad you were willing to come on my show. I say that because I had at least one Christian who was saying they wanted to come on my show, but then they declined because of differences in spiritual opinion. That was very, very disturbing to me, especially since that same person who said that was very fond of the First Amendment. And I would think, well, if you love the First Amendment, you love freedom of religion. So I can't understand why differences in spiritual opinion would cause you to not want to come on my show. I guess that guest felt kind of threatened that I would say something that would ruin their beliefs. But hey, if you're willing to talk about extraterrestrials and such and try to bring science and religion together and still be a pastor, I mean, you're obviously very open-minded. You're very unique among a lot of people, and I definitely got to have you as a guest on my show to help science and religion come together, or show how they don't come together, for that matter. So, first of all, for those that haven't heard of you, I'd like you to give a little background about what you do. Tell us all about your books. You got the floor, all the honors you got, so people can be very impressed and say, hey, this is a guy worth listening to for a couple of hours. So you got the floor. Tell us your life story in regards to your works, your books, and your honors.
Well, thank you, Andrew, very much. I am not fragile, so you can just let her rip with whatever's on your mind. I like your cloning theory about President Obama. We've got one clone that's campaigning for Hillary. You didn't mention another clone is probably out playing basketball somewhere. And maybe the original is hard at work in the Oval Office. I don't know. At any rate. Cloning actually is a topic I did study when the cloning controversy broke in February of 1997. I was already involved here in Berkeley, California with a project monitoring the Human Genome Initiative. And I'm a Lutheran pastor, as you mentioned, and a Christian theologian. And in Berkeley, we've got what we call the Center for Theology and the Natural Sciences. And we like virtually all sciences. That doesn't mean that I'm conversant in them all, but one of them was genetics for a long time. And related matters such as cloning and stem cells, and now I'm trying to monitor the CRISPR controversy, which will probably be a repeat of the stem cell controversy, which hasn't actually gone away, but it certainly has died down quite a bit. Yeah, our task in Berkeley is the creative mutual interaction between science and religion, and we want good science, genuine science. We don't want ideologies, Richard Dawkins or E.O. Wilson, or, where there's kind of a political, social agenda. But, what do the researchers in the laboratory have to tell us about the nature of reality, which by coincidence happens to be the task of your show. We really like scientists of that sort, and then we try to draw out religious implications if there are some. Not always are there, and then see where that takes us. So that's the kind of business that I'm in, and I love living in Berkeley because I've got Lutherans there, and I've got interreligious setting, and with Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, and Hindu colleagues, right along with the Catholics and the Protestants. And then with the University of California, we've got as many scientists as Orange County has oranges. So it's kind of hog heaven for me.
Thank you. And let's talk about one of your books here. Just bear with me here because I'm kind of going between Google Chrome and Internet Explorer because I had a little glitch there in regards to trying to signing on here. But I'm reading off the that video that you did on the UFO TV, the Disclosure Network YouTube video. It says you are the author of the book UFOs, God's Chariots, Flying Saucers in Politics, Science, and Religion. I'm all big on this subject because I was recently at the Mount Shasta Secret Space Conference that Robert Potter was heading. So this was a very big subject, UFOs in politics and science and religion for that matter. The first part of the title, UFOs, God's Chariots, I'm going to guess you're not plagiarizing there. You adapted, not plagiarized, adapted from Eric von Daniken's book, Chariots of the Gods. And I'm currently in the process of trying to read every single one of his books, which I can get in my local library for free. So a little bit of a mission there, become an expert on ancient astronaut theory just by reading every single one of his books. I'm sure I can be, but at some point I'll see if maybe that book that you wrote, UFOs, God's Chariots, is in the library, and if it is, I'll definitely want to consider reading it. But in regards to flying saucers in politics, you got the UFOs that were flying over the Capitol in the early 1950s. Some say that has connections to the treaty that Dwight Eisenhower signed with the Greys and the Reptilians, which some people like Laura Eisenhower, Dwight Eisenhower's great-granddaughter, have asserted that treaty was in the works all the way since the presidency of FDR, but it didn't become like really big and important until Eisenhower's presidency. And then you got UFOs and flying saucers in religion, all those paintings and such that seem to depict UFOs and flying saucers, and there's also one that seems to show flying saucer like impregnating Mary or something with Jesus of all things. And of course, when it comes to flying saucers in science, I had Stanton Friedman on my show, and he talked about how he thinks magneto-hydraulic propulsion is used to make flying saucers fly and travel. And I had John Lear on my show. He talked about Bob Lazar's element 115 technology, and of course there's all kinds of different far-flung sciences in regards to how UFOs and flying saucers can get from point A to point B, be it that stuff or monopoles. I remember seeing Michio Kaku on some Science Channel show talk about how he would use the science of monopoles to get flying saucers to go from point A to point B on a planet. An interesting subject I thought I'd point out. But your book, from the standpoint of politics, science, and religion, UFOs, God's Chariots, I'll give you the floor to talk about all three areas, politics, science, and religion, and how flying saucers and UFOs in general, and if they are ET related, how that factors into it too. Tell us what your research has shown.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you've had Stan Friedman on. He's one of the guys I like quite a bit in the UFO movement, and he likes to put on his scientific goggles and look at UFOs as what I call the science model. That is to say, they're spaceships carrying passengers from one planet to another. And he said this, but I hear him say repeatedly that better than the case in a courtroom to consider a defendant guilty or innocent is the case to demonstrate the reality of visitors from other planets. So he's a great rhetorician. He argues well, but the UFO phenomenon is complex. And the reason my book has that subtitle, Flying Saucers in Politics, Science, and Religion, is that I want to look at the ways people interpret the otherwise anomalous and mysterious phenomenon. And Stan Friedman fits the second model. He's going to interpret UFO experiences through scientific lenses. I call it the nuts and bolts approach. And that's my favorite approach because my dad was an engineer. I kind of grew up with that. But the political lens is important. Already, if you want to say that the modern UFO phenomenon begins in June 1947, and already in July with the Roswell situation, we have this evidence, apparent physical evidence that seems to be stolen by the Army Air Force or removed or relabeled as if it were debris from a balloon. You've got suddenly this controversy now that the government is out to fool us. And why? The very first books on the flying saucers were published in 1950, and right off the bat, the controversy with the U.S. government is as important as the report. So the political significance of flying saucers has just never not been there. And the case that you mentioned of flying saucers buzzing the White House in Washington, that's July 19 to 27, 1952, and there were multiple nights where objects were seen in the Washington area, and not only visually, but also tracked on radar. And the whole nation was excited and upset about all of this. And that led to the Robertson panel, in which Uncle Sam, under the counsel and advisement of military and scientific people, decided to have an official debunking policy that if you report a flying saucer, you're going to get your reputation harmed. And their motive had to do with national security. That was, they were afraid that the Soviet Union would be sending them a bunch of bogeys over, and by that time we had a U.S. Air Force, would be so investigating those bogeys that they couldn't tell which would be serious military threats from those which are benign. And so that tells you right there that Uncle Sam had already decided that UFOs are not a military threat. They're something, but they're not a military threat. And at any rate, my point in the book is that in the modern period, the political stuff has never been absent from what people think of as the importance of flying saucers, right down to the Disclosure Project, which I think you might have mentioned in your remarks. So we've got these two different models, the political model, the scientific model, and the third one is the religious model. And if you take a look at the great contactees of the 1950s, right on down to the Raelians of the 21st century, you get these claims on the part of Earthlings that they've actually made contact with extraterrestrials, and in some cases it's been mystical, but in almost all cases it's been moral in character. George Adamski and the other great contactees of the 1950s, for them, the issue was nuclear arms testing. We've got to stop testing these radioactive weapons because we're going to destroy ourselves either through polluting the atmosphere or precipitating a war, and the spacelings want to protect us from self-destruction. So we've got sneaking in here a doctrine of salvation, and this salvation is going to come through the courtesy of extraterrestrial technology, a technology that is purified, so to speak. One of the problems with World War II was our technology was ambiguous. On the one hand, we killed hundreds of thousands of people with bombs and atomic bombs. On the other hand, it was the scientific discovery of the atomic bomb that ended the war. And so we had this ambiguous relationship between our society and science. But the UFO message is, we'll get rid of the ambiguity. We're going to give you a science that is purified, so to speak. It only works for good and not for evil. And quite frequently in these reports of aliens, they also had advanced medicine to give us so that we could live a long and healthy life measured in hundreds of years. So a religious model begins to develop. It's very secular. It's very scientific. It's usually not connected with past religions, with one exception, and that is there's a New Age influence. Actually, it's the history of theosophy coming through Britain and the United States. And there are some mystical dimensions, and sometimes UFOs get connected with reincarnation and things of that nature. So you're right, Andrew, in pointing out that the title of my book is a response to Erich von Däniken's Chariots of the Gods, and of the many books that Erich has written, that was the bomb, so to speak, that exploded in everybody's consciousness. And it had sold so many books, and I had examined Erich's work in detail, and then I had a nice chance to debate him on the radio in Detroit on one occasion. And so I have a chapter in my book which is a critical response to von Däniken's ancient astronaut theory. And I have a question mark in my title. Are they really the chariots of the gods? And I want to say, physically, no, I don't think so. Because any reports that you want to take seriously about visiting aliens, they're just overgrown earthlings who are smarter than we are in science and technology. On the other hand, I want to give a yes to the question, are they celestial angels visiting us? Because the message, at least up through the 1980s, the message was always very wholesome. Namely, the peoples of Earth need to get together, stop engaging in war, or the threat of war, and stop developing these weapons of mass destruction and pursue world peace. And I think that's a divine message, no matter who delivers it. It could be delivered by your neighbor next door, or the rabbit out in the cornfield, or an alien. It's still going to be God speaking when we hear the message to pursue world peace. So then one final comment, Andrew, and then I'm going to let you jump back in. The first edition of UFOs, God's Chariots was published in 1976, and it was a direct contribution to the discussion that Erich von Däniken had introduced. But now I've published a second edition just a year or so ago with New Page. That's the publisher that von Däniken currently publishes with. And in the second edition, I have to take up a challenge to my whole theory. And that developed in the late 80s and early 90s with the new abduction accounts, where so many people claimed a very negative experience by being abducted by spacelings and sexually abused, physically abused, psychologically abused. Sometimes hybrid children are made, and these people reported very negative experiences. So the challenge I had to confront was, now wait a minute, most contactee and abduction reports prior to that time were positive in character. Now we were getting the negative ones. So I had to work through that challenge, so to speak, and that's what justified an updating and a revision, etc. So don't read the old one, read the new one. Your turn, Andrew.
By all means, I'll try to read the new one if that's what hopefully that's, if the library has it, that's what it will have. But right now I'd like to try to kill two birds with one stone here. I'm using the description they put here on the UFO TV Disclosure Network as a little bit of a guide here to help me discover some topics of conversation. It says you have consulted for NASA and SETI on the ethics of planetary protection. Now, that's going to raise a few eyebrows there, seeing you consulted for NASA and SETI, because NASA and SETI, a lot of people got some serious issues with those organizations. NASA, some say it stands for never a straight answer. I prefer to say not always a straight answer, just to give them maybe a little bit of credit for what they talk about. That's true. Yeah, and also SETI, Stan Friedman, he also jokes that SETI should stand for a silly effort to investigate, because the way that they try to track messages from space, you're not going to find anything that's really, really far away if you're looking for radio signals. And by the time a radio signal gets to us from the planet that's X amount of light years away, the signal's going to be traveling at the speed of light. So by the time it gets here, it's kind of like old news, been there, done that. You kind of like were way past the deadline for when it would have been significant to receive this. So that's why Stan says it stands for a silly effort to investigate. And I can't help but wonder what Seth Shostak, the president of SETI, would wonder if someone got in his face and said, "Do you realize the way you're trying to find communications is a joke for all intents and purposes?" I'm sure he knows, but he's like, "Well, hey, at least I'm trying, so give me some credit there." But anyway, that and also the ethics of planetary protection. That's interesting because I don't know how big you are in the whole ET contactee thing, but I've had some of those guest ET contactees on my show, and they assert that, yeah, we're getting protected. Like, if there was a doomsday asteroid about to hit Earth, don't worry about it. There's good ETs up there protecting us. They'd have the technology to destroy that asteroid in a heartbeat. Maybe not blow it up, because that would be like to cause little asteroids to hit the Earth, but other ways of like making it not hit the Earth. So they have ways of preventing the chaotic and crazy universe out there from harming humanity. So in that sense, you could say, yeah, there's definitely some planetary protection going on from our space brothers and sisters. But I don't know if that ties into what you've done with that in regards to NASA SETI and the ethics of planetary protection. So why don't we kill some birds with one stone here, NASA SETI and the ethics of planetary protection? What's that all about?
We've got lots of birds flying around in this conversation now, but let me start with Stan Friedman and Seth Shostak. And Seth is Stan's favorite target at SETI, and I love Stan. Stan's got a great sense of humor. Seth actually has a great sense of humor, but they don't laugh at each other. My way of describing it is this way, is that if the NASA and SETI scientists get together for a barbecue, they never invite the UFO people, such as Stan Friedman. And if the UFO people get together for a barbecue, they don't invite the SETI or NASA people either. They're both groups are interested in the same topics, but they do not give credence to each other. And from Stan Friedman's point of view, he'll say, well, why is SETI looking electronically for intelligent life at a great distance when they're already here? You could just talk to them. And it is true that Seth Shostak and the NASA people and SETI people do not grant credence or seriousness to the UFO phenomenon at all. So they work with the assumption that there has been no contact in the past and that they are going to govern everything they pursue scientifically with Einstein's one and only one absolute, namely the speed of light. So they even call it the speed of light problem, that communication with exoplanets within the Milky Way galaxy is just going to be so difficult because everything is slowed down by the speed of light. And that just doesn't bother the UFO people, because they imagine that somehow or other our alien friends have been able to solve that little speed of light problem. So basically my way of describing this is they have separate barbecues, and we'll just have to leave it at that. Next, when it comes to planetary protection, what I do is I list 10 or 12 ethical issues in space exploration, and most of them have to do with NASA. NASA is primarily concerned with what happens within our solar system. SETI is primarily concerned with exoplanets or what's happening outside the solar system elsewhere in the Milky Way. So if we just take a look at what's going on within our solar system and space exploration, planetary protection has to do with biospheres, where there are living things. And backward contamination would be something like this, that suppose Chris McKay or one of the other Mars explorers finds life and brings it back to Earth. Could it be a form of life that would so contaminate life on Earth that it would kill us all? So, it's just common sense that we're going to decontaminate anything that we bring back from space. We've already done that with moon rocks and things like that. But the tougher question is this has to do with forward contamination. What if we find a biosphere on Mars or Titan or any of the moons that orbit the larger planets? What if we find a biosphere there? What's our moral responsibility? Should we just get there like the movie Avatar and run it over with bulldozers? Or should we sort of respect it, study it? The scientific community, by and large, that's your NASA people, are going to say, we have a moral obligation to treat life on another planet as having intrinsic value, and we're going to protect it. Mars Society, on the other hand, Mars Society wants to put a colony on the red planet. Mars Society says, heck, it's our destiny to explore and to conquer, and it's going to be a lot better if we put intelligent life on Mars instead of a bunch of microbes. So it's a moral issue because you have these two rather distinct positions. You brought up the possibility of getting hit, our planet getting hit by an asteroid. That is a realistic question. Let me just say that the term planetary protection doesn't apply there. It's not a logical thing. It's just the way scientists talk with one another. And so that's a separate moral issue. And we Earthlings need to ask ourselves whether or not we should have an international consortium of responsible nations to planet from the likelihood of an asteroid having an impact, large asteroid, in one fashion or another. So that's a moral issue because how are you going to get China and the United States, to have a single concerted plan, and can they move rapidly enough, assuming that it's going to take a number of years of technological development before we're ready? And we're going to confront the first possible challenge somewhere around 2027. Will we be ready? Let me just say that's an ethical issue, but we don't call it planetary protection. So what do you think, Andrew?
I think you did a very good job of covering everything in regards to NASA and SETI, how they get along and don't get along with everybody, and also planetary protection, what it is and what it isn't, clarifying the confusion there. Seeing some of the other things, we got a whole slew of different subjects here to talk about, and got only 2 hours, so let's talk about it in great detail.
Lots of birds
on the fly here, so we can, do them in detail, but yet do them on the fly so we can get many things in. It says here in the description, now on the ongoing for discovery of exoplanets. Okay, that's something worth discussing, because I've interviewed some people in regards to the whole issue of whether or not a planet has to be in the quote-unquote Goldilocks zone of a solar system in order to support life. And I've heard from some people that idea is just a mainstream media, mainstream science lie. Because, well, first of all, John Lear, when I had him on my show, he talked about a NASA, I don't know if it was a NASA whistleblower, but some whistleblower told him about how we've been lied to about the nature of stars and such, like the sun and all other stars. They're not powered by nuclear fusion. With all due respect to Stanton Friedman, he's mistaken on that, well, some would say, because he pushes that. But stars are not a nuclear fusion. They're actually electric, not so much electromagnetic, but really electric. strictly electric, maybe a little magnetism in there, but they're electric, and each planet, and this is what John Lear says, has its own filtering system in its atmosphere, which is connected on a universal web of electromagnetic energy. Many say it's better not to think of a universe as being an electrical universe, an electromagnetic universe that's intertwined with a universal web of electromagnetic consciousness energy that we can't see because it's outside visible light, but it's there, like the web of dark matter, and the planets work in conjunction with the stars to transmit the energy from the stars into the planet and create through the filtering system in the planet's atmosphere an environment that's suitable for life, regardless of where the planet is located. So like the gas giant planets like Jupiter and Saturn, they actually do have life on them that's like gas giant specific, some would assert. And not only that, getting back to the whole ET contactee thing, maybe you're not really big on that issue, but when I had an ET contactee on my show, he talked about the planet Nibiru that Zecharia Sitchin glorified in his work, saying the home planet of the Anunnaki. He said, yeah, that planet does exist. Sitchin was right, and many would assert, well, that's ridiculous. How could aliens exist on that planet? It's in a 3,600-year elliptical orbit from the sun, far beyond the orbit of Neptune. Any life from there would freeze. Well, no. The ET contactee said the planet has an internal energy source. It doesn't actually function on the same like consciousness drive that planet Earth and some other planet does, and it also has its own protective shield around it that allows it to go throughout throughout space and survive many of the dangers of space. So that's how Nibiru allows for the Anunnaki and some other ET races, for that matter, to exist on it. I know we're jumping off into the deep end here, but my point is this shows that all these scientists who are trying to find exoplanets and planets for life, they're being way, way too conservative when they're trying to find planets in the quote-unquote Goldilocks zone, because in reality, life is far more abundant than that. And not just in the, like some would say, well, yeah, you can find life on any planet, just travel another spiritual dimension or something, or a spatial dimension when you go to the planet. No, you don't have to do that, because like I said, when you travel through the planet, the filtering system allows for life. Maybe not life as we know it, but some form of life to exist on it. So if you fly a rocket from here to another planet and step off it, you're going to find some life without having to travel to another dimension or something. I know it's off the deep end, but if you're looking for exoplanets, it's definitely worth something to consider and keep an open mind about. So now that I've brought this to your attention, do you have anything to say about your search for exoplanets and the possibility of life on them?
Well, I love jumping into the deep end, so it's a great question, Andrew, to think about. I'm trying to get inside the minds of those who hold that view. Let me, for a moment, try to defend the standard NASA or SETI model about the habitable zone or the Goldilocks zone. And the reason that idea is so prevalent is that the scientists presume that if life is going to be similar to what we know on Earth, it requires water in three different forms, vapor, liquid, and frozen, but especially liquid. So it's with that observation that the whole idea of the habitable zone then is built around the whole notion of liquid water as a necessary component to life. So does that mean empirically they know that? No, they don't know that. It's a good theory. Let me tell you about another theory that is developed by, I'm trying to remember his name now, a physicist at Princeton University. And his theory goes like this. I'll think of his name in a minute. That we can imagine that evolution over time would start on a planet in the habitable zone, but life would eventually develop a technology in which it would organize all of the natural resources within its respective solar system, and they might even build an entire grid, and try to imagine a grid the size of our own solar system, in which everything would be mustered and channeled. And in principle, of course, with technology, you can live on a planet that is not an habitable zone then. You just simply channel energy, and just like we can build a submarine and live in the uninhabitable ocean, so also you could do that within a solar system if you have advanced technology. So he's saying, let's look for these technological zones, so to speak, in space, and not merely the Goldilocks planet. So, but that's, adds the premise that you're not dealing with life in its initial natural form, but it's an advanced technological form. And so there might be some way to get Zecharia Sitchin and the more standard model, in harmony there, if you'll grant that things will change. But the assumption there is life is going to have to start on a Goldilocks planet, even if it doesn't stay there.
Yes, and in regards to what other planets look like, are you pretty much open to the idea that what the planets look like and the moons and such, we've generally been lied to, among other things? Like there was Project Camelot, Bill Ryan and Kerry Cassidy. They tried to do a show that appeared on the True TV network. It only aired for one episode and got canceled. I wonder why, but the one episode that they did, it was about Mars, and three things that they showed in that episode about Mars was, first of all, the sky on Mars is not the color we're led to believe. It's actually a baby blue color, which implies, among other things, that Mars does have some oxygen in its atmosphere. And some assert, you can, some people that have been there, as a matter of fact, assert you can walk on the surface of Mars without a spacesuit. It wouldn't be as easy. It's a little hard to breathe because there isn't as much oxygen, so you really can't do a lot of strenuous work and all, but you don't need a spacesuit for protection. And the desert, the surface of Mars, it's not the reddish color we're led to believe. It more closely resembles like the desert of Arizona, and there's many different forms of life out there, like predator life. Alfred Weber, when I had him on my show, he talked about how he's got this whole book of different predator-like species that exist on Mars. And Andrew Bashago, who was part of the program to Mars, talks about different races of ETs that exist on Mars. And the moon. John Lear, I believe he said, I'm not 100% sure on this, but the late Edgar Mitchell, I believe he said, was the astronaut that said that the sky on the moon is actually a saffron yellow color. The moon does have an atmosphere, and I don't know if it's actually possible to live without a suit on the moon, because that's not really oxygen based, but it does have air of sorts on it, and it's not like all rocky and such like we're led to believe. So NASA, being not always a straight answer, as they would say, has lied to us about the nature of the composition of the planets and the moons and such. So do you think, there is they have lied to us about maybe the nature of everything, and do you by any chance follow any sort of a protocol of how can you tell which is a NASA lie in regards to what planets and moons look like in their pictures and which is not, or is it all just a wild guess in regards to whether they're lying or not?
Well, Andrew, I think that series of questions probably goes beyond the scope of my knowledge to comment on. I will say that I've kind of followed Edgar Mitchell a little bit over the years. He's a person I have a great deal of respect for, and would take anything he says seriously. I do happen to know that these photographs that NASA gives us are usually colored by artists. They don't necessarily see the actual colors that you and I see on the pictures. But I just, with my friends at NASA, they just don't strike me as the liar type of people. But I have not investigated this with those kinds of questions in mind, I have to say.
Okay, fair enough. Let's switch over, I guess, to religion. Switch gears and talk about religion of sorts. You've you're an ordained pastor at a evangelical Lutheran church, and you're an editor for religion. Served as editor for a science and religion thing and some Encyclopedia of Religion as well. Now, when it comes to religion, my take on religion is it's not. It's kind of wrong to say religions are crap, lies, and all that. No, I mean a lot of the things in they have these stories and all. Like they say, the Bible is the greatest story ever told. Yeah, it's a story, but it's still it has grains of truth in it that were twisted and distorted. I mean, even Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartis, who I've used many times as probably my number one source on my show, he said Jesus did exist. He was a solar being, but his story has been twisted. And I guess many would assert you can make the same case with all the religious figures in all the major religions of the world. They all existed in some way. And one would say, by virtue of the fact that thoughts manifest, our thoughts become reality. Like enough people meditate on a certain crop circle and envision a crop circle appearing. If enough energy flowing can give enough attention to that, then yeah, you can create a crop circle in the field. Well, similarly, you can create a religious character if enough people in a religious faith follow it. It just may not exactly appear in this reality. It may appear in some other spatial dimension that either is or is not causally connected to our spatial dimension or reality, but it must exist by virtue of the fact that thoughts manifest. And the religions being brainwashing, the whole idea behind that statement is that you are infinite consciousness, you are everything that is, was, and ever will be. The movie The Matrix is a perfect metaphor for what reality is actually like. The problem with following a religion is you are following some higher power, which means that you are suppressing your consciousness, because as long as you believe that there is some higher power to take orders from, then you are not going to be able to achieve your true infinite consciousness, infinite love potential, no matter how hard and how much of a service to others, entity, or being you actually are. So I don't mean to put down religion and all that. Believe me, I do have a lot of respect for the founding fathers for putting freedom of religion in the First Amendment, realizing that it's a critical part of a free society. But my point is that religion had its flaws, and maybe I could give you the chance to either agree or disagree with this statement, excluding the New Age movement. Some say New Age is a religion. Well, maybe it is. But as far as all the things that we call quote-unquote religions, I remember Andrew Bartis, that Akashic Records reader I mentioned, saying Buddhism is the religion in regards to metaphysics. Buddhism is the religion that is the most accurate, but in the end, even the Buddhists got it wrong. So being someone who follows religion, I'll give you the chance to either agree or disagree on that, and also give your general take on how religion factors into your work and how you see it in regards to its affairs in the world in general.
Well, I work with two different references for religion. On the one hand, narrowly speaking, it could refer to the religions. I'm a Lutheran, so the Lutheran Church and its tradition is a specific, historical religion, as is the Roman Catholic Church or the various Buddhist traditions, etc. These are religions in the very obvious sense. I also use the word religion in a non-obvious way to refer to certain structures of consciousness, both individual and social, although the social is far more interesting. Societies that don't claim to be religious can be seen to be religious if you analyze how they structure themselves around depth and what's sacred, what's in the center, what's in the periphery, and things of that particular nature. And so with this second definition, you can look at many phenomena within our culture and pull out its religious depth. And that's what I try to do in that book, UFOs, God's Chariots, and to show how Stan Friedman, among others, who think of themselves as secular and scientific, actually are functioning in a religious way. Stan believes a whole myth about extraterrestrials being more highly evolved in science and technology, and they will come to Earth with all of the blessings of science and technology and save us from self-destruction. That's a myth. It's a form of religion, and of course it's not connected to any church, but it's a whole story of salvation. But now the saviors are UFO-nauts coming to us in flying saucers rather than angels coming on clouds. So I use that second definition as a way of getting at religious phenomena that are outside of the church. Now, you mentioned Buddhism, and Buddhism is sort of special, mainly because at the very core of Buddhism, you've got philosophical reflection. You don't have ecstatic revelations for the most part and stuff like that. The Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha, most likely is a historical person. But he sits there and he says, now, what's true? Boy, it wouldn't hurt for us more frequently to sit there and say, hey, what's true? You know, and he notices that every sentient being is suffering. And, well, what's the cause of the suffering? Well, it's the desire not to suffer, which gets frustrated. And he goes through this logical analysis and ends up with kind of a core truth. And Buddhists, right down to the present day, regardless of what Buddhist sect you're in, they all kind of go back to that core set of teachings. Now, you, Andrew, had cited somebody who said Buddha got it wrong. I kind of would like to hear that person give me the argument, and hopefully that person would focus on this very core Buddhist insight. And what's sort of interesting about Buddhism that makes it a little bit different than some of the other religions is that its philosophical insight is not necessarily religion specific. I mean, you could be of a different tradition entirely and still benefit from, the core way in which a Buddhist is going to think about reality. Now, you did raise the question of what I would call the historicity of the Christian religion and some of the others. I think that there probably was a historical Confucius. There probably was a historical Lao Tzu, although the evidence for Confucius is much stronger than a Lao Tzu. In fact, descendants of Confucius are still living in Xi'an, China, and you can go and talk to them. I don't think that's the case for Lao Tzu, but you can ask that. When you ask the question about the historical Jesus, I don't think there's anybody who has seriously looked into the matter who denies that there's a historical Jesus. There really was one. The dispute or the difference has to do with what it means. What did he mean when Jesus proclaimed that God is gracious, God forgives sins, and God offers the promise of resurrection to everlasting life? You could say, well, he was full of crap, or maybe what he said was true, or something like that. The difference is going to be in the interpretation, not in the question as to whether there was a Jesus or not. The more general observation that you made, that you and I have a tendency, or the human race has a tendency to kind of wish upon a star, which certainly fits Stanton Friedman's myth of salvation from the ETs, or you can find it in many religious traditions as well, who are pre-modern. One thing about the flying saucer myth is that it's a modern myth. That was the way Carl Jung described it. Yeah, the human psyche is wishing upon a star, and what we need to do is just critically understand that that's who we are. So I've got one final question for you to think about, Andrew. If it's the case that religious people tend to be wanting to get their wishes fulfilled, to have this other dimension with the divine, how is that different from what seems to be your claim and those of your colleagues? How is that different from believing that there's a universal consciousness that you and I can kind of plug into and hopefully that we can live in if we can sort of get rid of the dross of the past, or get rid of the narrow-mindedness of past religions or something like that? It sounds to me like your belief in consciousness looks kind of like beliefs that other people have in more traditional religions. So what do you think?
Well, in regards to how your religious belief is going to play out, I seem to recall hearing some people say if you truly, truly believe that there is a Christian heaven, then if you pass away, your body passes away, your spirit, well, whatever you want to call it, spirit for lack of a better word, will get into what is a Christian heaven of sorts, because you believed it, in the same way that a placebo effect causes a medicine to work, even though it's not a real medicine. Your beliefs, your thoughts manifested. In fact, I recently listened to one of my previous guests, Margot, talk about how Christians, some people say, Christians, you're screwed. You won't ascend because when Earth ascends, you won't ascend because you're following religion. Your consciousness is suppressed. You need to get over your religion to be able to ascend. Well, no, it's not like that. If you're following a very good service to others' life, then you as a Christian will be able to live a very good afterlife, for lack of a better word, in a heaven, for lack of a better word, because you believed all along that that is what your reward will be. Now, other people would say, I've heard some people say, like, if you believe in the flat Earth theory, I think it's ridiculous, but if you believe in flat Earth, then when you die, maybe you'll find yourself living in some sort of a flat Earth reality, that where the Earth is actually flat as you believe it to be. So it all has to do with...
Do you yourself hold the position that you're currently enunciating, namely that our minds actually create a material reality that corresponds? Is that a position that you yourself hold? And if it is, would that also apply to forms of consciousness and not just to, inherited pictures of heaven?
Yes, because everything is consciousnness. Because when you're talking about different dimensions, you have to factor into many different criteria for what counts as a dimension, like how crystalline, for example, the matter is in that dimension. Like in a much higher dimension of consciousness, you'll find a lot more crystalline matter and a lot more lighter matter with less mass, or maybe even no mass in some reality. But everything is consciousness. It's just because of the collective nature of it. It's not just our individual. There's individual and collective. And I did talk about this with Franco De Nicola in great detail when I went to his retreat in Toronto at the Hive. How when I talked about sun gazing, how looking at the sun, if you believe like looking at the sun is harmful, then yes, it's going to hurt your eyes. But even if you don't believe, and naturally sun gazing is not supposed to hurt you, it's supposed to be safe. But we've been conditioned, lots of people have been conditioned to believe that looking at the sun will make you go blind. So even if you believe strongly that looking at the sun is not going to hurt you, and you believe that that was a lie all along, the problem, unfortunately, is that so many other people around you in the world have a collective consciousness energy that looking at the sun will hurt you. And by virtue of that, you may find, if you get your eyes checked, that there is some damage to your eyes. However, you will not lose your vision, because your faith in that it's not being harmful is counterattacking that, counteracting that. And you also have higher dimensional guides and angels, for example, who are protecting you and making sure that your vision does not suffer from the collective beliefs of all those people who believe that looking at the sun will make your vision suffer. Does any of this help you better understand where I'm coming from in regards to consciousness?
It does. Let me just inquire here. The view you just enunciated is actually kind of close to what many Hindus would think, that reality is, first of all, consciousness, and then this everyday material world that you and I keep bumping into is a distortion. It's Maya, it's not as real as consciousness, which is eternal, and the material world that we bump into is very temporal in character. And one of the biggest mistakes we can make is investing too much time and energy and etc. in living in the material world. I don't know as though the average Hindu would have the view that you enunciated, that somehow or other, well, your illustration about the sun, let me just say, I think I get that. I think I see how that makes sense. Let me ask you this question. Have you ever had the experience in which, by focusing your consciousness, you could actually change a reality from one thing to another, especially if it's a material reality, so that you could, at least to your own satisfaction, demonstrate that your consciousness has that force or impact on the material world?
If I get what you're trying to ask, I could give an example of how at my job, I work at my family-run business. I was having a lot of trouble like a year ago with some employee that was really lazy and always asking me for help and always being a total jerk and all that. And then shortly thereafter, I started watching a lot of mind movies, videos and such that deal with things like wealth and abundance and loving things and friends and inner peace and courage, and that with like 3-minute videos that have subliminal messages in them that you see and hear. And they claim that listening to these for just 3 minutes morning and night can help change your life for the better. Shortly after I did that, that jerk in life that at my job ended up quitting and moved to another job, and someone else who happened to have the same name by appropriate coincidence or appropriate synchronicity, for lack of a better word, took the place of that person who left the job. And that person was much more competent and barely ever asked me for help and was willing to take charge, and things got a little better. And I'm currently in the process of trying to change a couple things in my life, because I have been, I'm not going to really get into detail about this, but I've been doing something that's kind of been disturbing someone. Even though I'm trying not to disturb them, it has been disturbing them, and I can see where they're coming from. It's my fault in a sense. I'm actually making a plan to stop that, and I am expecting to see certain things change in the rest of my life that are coming at me. Like there's a Christian saying, you reap what you sow. And I was actually going to ask you about this in a little bit in regards to that, tying in with sin and all that, after we finish, you finish asking all the questions to me. But yes, I do believe that changing your life will, from, I guess, a law of attraction standpoint, change the reality that you get, because you reap what you sow. What you give is what you get. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Newton's law is a more down-to-earth way of saying you reap what you sow.
Well, I think that's a good illustration. I have a fantasy, I have to confess. I love baseball, and no major league team is ever going to send a scout out to be pitch or bat. So I have this fantasy that I'm in the batter's box, and the hurler sends a fastball at about 95 or 96 across the plate. Now, what I would like to do with my consciousness is slow that ball down to a stop, where I can get a good read on it and bat it. And do you think anybody could ever develop consciousness to manipulate the physical world that way? You don't have to answer this question, Andrew.
Well, it's funny you actually asked that, because the answer many would say is yes. I remember seeing some presentations where they say baseball players, it's actually impossible to hit a 100-mile-per-hour fastball, but your body has a mechanism, like the same survival mechanism that allows you to like slow down time when you're in some dire situation.
Yeah.
Like they've done experiments where you drop someone from a big height and they discover that time seems to slow down for them. The same phenomenon happens when a fastball going 100 miles per hour is going at you, and your sense of having slowed down time makes it possible for you to hit the fastball going 100 miles per hour, which would otherwise be impossible if that slowing down of time mechanism did not exist.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and I've actually been wanting to ask some batters who can hit those fastballs, and if it were to only happen in their psychic apparatus, that would be good enough. If in their psychic apparatus everything is in slow motion, well, then they'll have everything it takes to hit that pitch. And I know Ted Williams, who was head and shoulders above all other players during his own era, and maybe even perpetually. What made it possible for him to hit was extraordinary vision. He can see at 20 feet, what others of us see at around 4 feet. And so that has nothing to do with timing, but if you know where the ball is, you can hit it. And one of the problems with those fast pitches is you don't know where the ball is. So, yeah, Ted Williams, I don't think, had that ability to objectively change things, but subjectively, because he could see so well. That's why he was able to hit so well. At any rate, I'd like to interview some baseball players these days who really are able to hit those fastballs and see what they say.
Yes, I guess I would too. That would be a good nature reality subject, how the slowing down of time phenomenon from the point of view of a baseball player works. But switching gears, getting back to, I did want to talk to you about this. Sin and evil and reaping what you sow. Now, this seems to be an area where things clash. Now, Christians believe that you reap what you sow. That's kind of what other religions would refer to as karma. And when it comes to the issue of Christ having died for all of our sins, many would assert, well, that's ridiculous. Nobody can die for your sins, because if you sin, you create karma, and only you can resolve that karma. Now, it may not necessarily be in this life. Now, this is a subject a lot of Christians would find very touchy, but many assert that there is such a thing as reincarnation, and one reason reincarnation would happen is because you have to resolve karma. Like, let's say in this life you rape someone. I know it's pretty unpleasant to talk about, but it makes the point that like in this life you rape someone, you don't suffer any consequences. Well, you have to resolve the karma. So what happens? Well, you reincarnate, and in your next life you end up getting raped, and you wonder, why did this happen to me? Well, you get like an Akashic reading or something from someone, and they tell you, well, I hate to tell you this, but the reason you got raped was because in a past life you raped someone and you didn't get any consequences from that. So, like it or not, the karma had to be resolved. That's the way reality works, like it or not. So that kind of shows, and that's what many assert how reality works. So that means that Christ could not possibly have died for our sins, because you have to pay the punishment for your sins, and you have to find a way to resolve the karma, be it in this life or some other life. So this topic of sin and evil and reaping what you sow and karma and all that, any comments?
Yes, this is an extremely important topic. It's one I thought quite a bit about. Do you remember Elizabeth Clare Prophet? You'd mentioned the New Age earlier, and she was a Gnostic leader of a cult called CUT, Church Universal and Triumphant, first in San Francisco and then went to Montana. I don't know if you remember her or not, but we had a debate one time in southern Montana over just the issue that you raise. And she insisted, as you do, that you got the law of karma, And what she wanted to do was to show how in the New Testament, what you reap is what you're going to sow, is an example that shows that in the New Testament, the law of karma is at work. And it is true that if you're a Hindu or to some extent a Buddhist, that the evil that you and I perpetrate in this life, just like a machine, will go click, 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 and then we get whacked in the next incarnation. So the question is that what the Bible's message is? And my answer is no. Yeah, we do have those passages, and even Jesus says those kinds of things. So what I understand is that that's sort of the natural way that we human beings think about good and evil. And right now I've got a dog, a puppy named Angie, and unfortunately Angie has free will. And so if I call her to, go for a walk or something like that, she decides she doesn't want to do this. And so she lays down with passive resistance. I have to go and pick her up physically. So I've been trying to decide what kind of a punishment could I think of. Well, she's so cute, you don't want to punish her. And so what I would like is for Angie to get the message. What you reap is what you show, and I haven't figured out how to make that happen. The reason what you sow is what you reap is not the law of karma in the New Testament, is that the God of Jesus Christ is a personal God. The universe is not set up according to these engineered rules in which for every moral action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So those are the laws of physics, as rightly attributed to Isaac Newton. But the moral law is not like the physical law. For the Hindus, there's no difference, but there definitely is for the New Testament. And one of the chief messages of the New Testament is forgiveness. So if Angie disobeys me, I have the option of forgiving Angie. I haven't done it yet, but I have that option. And so also God has the option of forgiving you and me, and that means that the evil deeds that you and I might have performed do not necessarily have to result in an equal and opposite punishment if God forgives us. And so the gospel message of the New Testament is aimed at sinners. Jesus says this, St. Paul says this. It's really sinners who can't figure out a way to make good the bad things that they have done, that the message of forgiveness comes as good news. So the reason, just to summarize, the reason the Bible doesn't look like the law of karma is that the God of the Bible is personal, whereas Brahman and the law of karma in Hinduism is not. And then secondly, the whole point of the message, the gospel message, is that you and I receive forgiveness. So the death of Jesus for your and my sins, that's a good saying, but the real center of that is that God forgives us and we don't have to subject ourselves to the law of karma or an equal and opposite punishment of some sort or another. I don't have to spank my dog Angie if in fact, I haven't yet. So what do you think, Andrew?
Oh, well, spanking, you mentioned I want to spank my dog. Is it a good idea to spank or not spank? Some would say that that's not the Christian way, or I don't know. I mean, some say it's a mammalian trait, like lots of mammals. It's perfectly normal trait in mammals to, like, if their offspring does something dangerous, as a way of trying to keep the offspring from doing it again. Like good example, a seal going over the edge of the ice cliff or something. The mother seal will bite the offspring seal that almost killed itself on the neck as a way of saying, don't do this. If you do this again, I'm going to bite you because I love you and you're my son. I don't want you to do this. Spanking is the same thing, but many would assert spanking your kid is not the way to do it. So it's a agree to disagree issue, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We live in a non-violent era where spanking is frowned upon, but like the mother seal, parents who spank their children are trying to do it for the kids' own good. We just want to avoid the abuse issue. But note, if you ask the question to spank or not to spank, what we're doing is we're saying a person, namely the parent, is going to try to create a situation where what the child sows, the child reaps, so that the child learns something. And of course, once the child learns it, you stop spanking the child, etc. But that's a personal interaction. I mean, other things are not personal. So if you put your thumb too close to the blade on your table saw, I had a grandfather who had 3 fingers cut off. Well, what he sowed, he reaped. It was not a moral issue, but yeah, there certainly is a law of cause and effect there. But if you and I discipline our children so that they behave in ways that will protect their own safety, we're creating an artificial what you sow is what you reap. But in the long run, we love our children, and if the child disobeys, we still love the child,
and
etc.
So
that's what.
If you punish him too severely, then you're going to pay the price. Like that Minnesota Vikings quarterback Adrian Peterson, he spanked his kid too hard, and he ended up getting in trouble with Child Protection Services. So he got some bad karma for him for attacking his kids. So you got a little bit of a balance there.
Sad case, yeah.
Yeah, but I'd like to switch gears here. Get back to the subject of Christianity and Lutheran faith in particular. I just can't resist asking you this. It's a hard question to ask, but it's a fair question because, well, it's one of the purposes of my show to expose the nature of reality, and this is a great question for exposing the nature of Lutheran reality. Like Martin Luther, his whole thing with the 95 Theses and all, those who study Illuminati history would assert that Martin Luther, he was very in on the Illuminati conspiracy to create help create Protestantism as a way to divide and conquer Christians, as a way of getting something that was non-Catholic formed, like to create different sects of different religions. Like in Islam, you got the Sunnis and the Shiites, and in Christianity, you got Catholics and Protestants and whatnot, and all sorts of different faiths. You have different subsects, and many would assert that the Illuminati bloodlines, who are in many ways are responsible for twisting, if they didn't create the religion, at best they have twisted it, have done this to divide and conquer people. So if someone tells you, why would you want to be Lutheran or Protestant when Protestantism and Lutheranism was created as a way of dividing and conquering Christians by confusing the hell out of the people who follow the Christian faith and all, among other things, what would your response be?
Well, a couple things. First, historically, I don't know of any connection between Luther himself and the Illuminati. That doesn't mean it's impossible to just say I don't know of any. We do know quite a bit about the psyche of Luther because so many things were written down. Remember, this was the advent of the printing press becoming a dominant force in Europe. So we know a lot more about Luther than we do about figures only 100 years earlier. Luther did not think of himself as breaking the Catholic Church. He just thought of himself as a loyal member of the Catholic Church. And the whole thing began in 1517, and so next year we celebrate the 500th anniversary. And all through the 1520s, he really didn't think of himself as having a separate church. The word Protestant was invented in 1527 by somebody else, not Luther. And somewhere in there, they asked Luther if they should call his disciples Lutherans or not. He says, absolutely not. He says, it's just one Christian church. Stop all this. So eventually, of course, he had to bite the bullet. And, there were a lot of political divisions at the time, and the lands got separated into Roman Catholic and non-Catholic lands. And so Luther himself actually was not responsible for that. It was mainly the princes who both wanted to, on the one hand, stir up rivalry, and on the other hand, they wanted to quell the rivalry. And at one point in there, once they had established which principalities would be Lutheran and which would be Catholic, they gave everybody a chance to move. So that if you were a Lutheran in the Catholic principality, you could move to a Lutheran one and vice versa. And after all that got settled down, and it looked like Central Europe was a patchwork then of these different points of view. Let me just say, Luther himself didn't really sponsor that. So I hesitate to concur with that theory that you just enunciated. That doesn't mean there might not have been somebody else interested in breaking the church up, but I don't think Luther himself really liked that idea. In fact, he kind of regretted it, but there was nothing he could do about it. I mean, at a certain point, he was persona non grata. He was subject to arrest, and he had no control over putting Humpty Dumpty back together again once it had shattered.
Yes, and switching gears. Well, not really switching gears, but moving to another gear of sorts in regards to Christianity and a revolution of sorts with the Vatican. Having said, in like 2008, 2009, or whatever it was, that belief in extraterrestrials does not contradict a belief in God. That raises a whole new can of worms in regards to why they would say that. Do they say that because they're just being more open-minded, or are they saying that because they're like maybe there's white hats or something in the Vatican who are gonna like try to expose some things? I mean, Leo Zagabi, a former 33rd degree Freemason who's a prominent whistleblower now, he interviewed people at Project Camelot and talked about how underneath the Vatican there's a very large reptilian alien base. And although one would say maybe that's not there anymore because anybody who's been paying attention to the whole ET contactee field would know that many of those reptilian bases that are underground have been destroyed, and makes you wonder if maybe the Vatican was one of the ones that would destroy. But the point I'm trying to make with that is the Vatican, because it has that secret base under it, or had that secret base under it, it's not really a Catholic organization. It's really a satanic cult that masquerades as a Catholic organization. And the reason they masquerade as Catholic is because Catholicism is the most popular religion in the world. If some other religion were the most popular religion in the world, then you can be sure that the Vatican, which some have asserted is the ball and chain around all spiritual faith on planet Earth in many regards, would definitely follow that other religion. They just chose Catholicism because that's what most religions follow, but in the end they are satanic. And this whole thing about why they said that ETs exist, is it because they're open-minded or because they know something? And who was behind that revelation? Was it the good guys in the Vatican, the white hats, or was it the bad guys? And if whichever it was, why? What agenda did they have when they exposed that? So any comments or thoughts on this issue?
Oh, yeah, I've got a lot to say about that, but let me just ask you, did I hear you say that the reptilians have a satanic cult? Did you put those together, or was that two different things?
Well, let me clarify. When I say Satanism, I'm not talking about the Satan of Christianity. I'm talking about like drinking blood, fire and brimstone worship, and
Okay.
sacrificing children.
Right.
Not the Satan of Christian lore. Just
Okay.
satanic ritual is what I'm trying to say. That's what they say the reptilian aliens practice, and that's what would be going on in the reptilian base that either is under the Vatican or was, if it's been destroyed by now.
Well,
So yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify there.
well, okay. Let me just respond with a little bit of a story because I had the privilege, for research reasons, to work rather closely with the Vatican Observatory from 1987 to 2002. Spent a lot of time in the Vatican. The observatory, I think, was founded about 1685. So they basically took Galileo's telescope and started, looking at the sky. And today, the Vatican Observatory has a number of researchers, I think most, or if not all of them, who are Jesuit-trained astronomers. And their main research project, I think, is galaxy formation. And they just kind of do science like everybody else does. So the center is at Castel Gandolfo, which is in the Vatican in Rome, and their research facility is at the University of Arizona in Tucson. So they're going back and forth from these two locations, but they have a large telescope at Kitt Peak, in which is just outside of Tucson, in which they do their research. Now, Pope John Paul II, during his pontificate, the director of the Vatican Observatory was a Jesuit named George Coyne, happened to be an American. And then when Cardinal Ratzinger became Pope, Coyne stepped down. He was replaced by an Argentinian named Jose Funes. Jose Funes is now here in Berkeley. I see him every week, and we kind of talk about things. The impression I got spending that time with the Vatican Observatory scientists is they just kind of go about their work in ways that you would expect ordinary university scientists to do. They didn't get too excited about things. The current director, and he's the one that you find getting interviewed frequently in the media, is a guy named Guy Consolmagno. He's a Jesuit brother, and he's loquacious and he's humorous, and the media just loves to interview him. And he's the guy who said, well, if the aliens land, we'll baptize them if they ask us. And Pope Francis kind of liked that line. And so maybe 2 years ago, Pope Francis was doing a chapel talk, and he borrowed that line. And so now you can hear baptizing aliens from both Pope and from Brother Consolmagno, the Vatican Observatory. Let me just say, that's what I've observed. I mean, it's not that I know everything. I just don't see a conspiracy hiding behind these guys, particularly. And, maybe there's something more there than what I perceive. But, after a couple decades, if there really was something sinister going on, I think I probably would have noticed. I just didn't notice anything. And they have finite minds and imaginations just like you and I do, and they do some science, but that doesn't mean they know the secrets of the universe in the way that the rest of us don't do. So that's kind of my response, Andrew, and I know that it's not very exciting. But
you say what you want. If you're not an expert on a subject, then by all means, I'm not asking you to speculate if you don't want to do that. But I just want to point this out because I remember at that secret space conference that I was at, the guy brought up the possibility that this new pope, he made some connections. I think this was Michael Salla who was talking about this, or maybe it was Corey Good, one of those guys. Both are prominent figures in the secret space program, whole thing. But anyway, they talked about how the Russian government is the government on planet Earth that knows the most in regards to secret space, and they made some connections between the Vatican having the Vatican Pope, the current Pope, having connections to some Russian scientist who's involved with the Russian government and has connections to the whole secret space thing. And this kind of would fly in the face of the idea that the current Pope that we have is a bad guy who is still taking orders from some wizard behind the curtain, which some could say is Ratzinger, former Pope Benedict, because a lot of people, when Pope Benedict resigned, something had to be going on there, because no Pope resigns because of ill health. Any self-respecting Pope would stay there till the day he dies, no matter how much suffering and health problems he's got. And that's what Pope John Paul II did, and he was there till the day he died. And every other Pope that wanted to be a decent Pope would do that to wow the Christians and everybody else. But Pope Benedict did not do that, and he resigned. And this led many people believe that he's still working as like a wizard behind the curtain, and many people say he looks a lot like Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars, and he does actually, and they say he works as a wizard behind the curtain in the Star Wars movies in many regards and such. So, but many say no, that's not what's going on, because this new Pope is working with this Russian guy who is big on the secret space program, and the fact that is going on shows maybe these white hats in the Vatican are helping overpower the bad conspiratorial guys in the Vatican, and maybe this whole ET revelation thing is a sign that, well, we're in for some big revelation soon, and this new Pope, he's not as much of a bad guy as some of us might want to think. So do you have any thoughts on this stuff I pointed out here?
Well, I do, and if I can speculate without any evidence at all, here's my speculation about why Benedict the 16th resigned. And again, I don't have any evidence, but these days a lot of people speculate without evidence. Here's my speculation. I'll bet you that a dozen years ago or so, I'll bet you there were a lot of lawsuits filed against the church for clergy abuse of acolytes and other kinds of problems. And I'll bet you that some of those lawsuits were naming Benedict XVI and probably motivated out of deep pockets or what have you. And so I wonder if he removed himself as the target, that maybe that would ameliorate the situation. But you know what? I'm just guessing, because you're right. Popes don't generally resign and go on vacation. It's just not what they do. And I myself was frankly glad to see him resign, because I don't think he had quite the charisma of Pope John Paul II and the flexibility of John Paul II, and Ratzinger was far less flexible. And I think Pope Francis is just a blessing, a breath of fresh air, so to speak, and a real healthy moment for the Roman Catholic Church. So exactly what happened, I don't know, but I think that the church is in a better place now with Pope Francis than before. I think your observation about knowledge in Russia regarding matters of space, I think is probably the case. I think that the Russians really do have a lot of knowledge about things having to do with space and space technology, etc., some of which they share with us, and others that they don't. I don't know about any negative conspiracies other than the usual ones. I will say that because of this renewed interest in extraterrestrial life due to exoplanets, even though Pope Francis himself isn't too interested, I don't think. But he has asked Jose Funes and others to start thinking about the religious implications of extraterrestrial life. My observation for all those years when I had colleagues in the Vatican Observatory was they weren't very interested, which I find kind of amazing. I mean, they're just doing their science, and it didn't seem to bother them one way or the other with extraterrestrial life. But now they're kind of getting interested because the rest of the world is getting interested at the discovery of the exoplanet. So we might see something developing. And so my observation, which could be accurate or inaccurate, my observation is that those of us who have thought, oh, there's this big conspiracy in the Vatican about extraterrestrial life where they've been hiding things, I would say probably not. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but, maybe I'm naive. I just like to see the polished surface and not the ugly underside. But let me just say, I didn't see any signs of something nefarious going on behind the scenes. But then again, I might not be qualified because I wasn't deep into the caverns of the Vatican's closed-door closets or basements.
Well, one thing's for sure, I really seriously doubt the Vatican has a lot of faith. I mean, you see the Pope when he rides out in his Pope-mobile, he's got guards protecting him behind like bulletproof glass and all that. I mean, if he truly had faith that God was protecting him, he wouldn't need all that. So that's certainly something that would raise a lot of eyebrows among people who say, do you really have faith? So yeah, it's worth pointing that out. But anyway, like to just, we got 19 minutes and 30 seconds left on the live feed, so maybe time for like 2 or 3 more subjects, depending on how much detail you want to get into them. I do have a couple things I want to discuss. First of all, looking at your website here, I noticed on the front page of your website here, it shows you swimming with dolphins. That's kind of interesting because dolphins, many have asserted, are not native to Earth. They are extraterrestrial in many regards, and so are whales. And they are here to raise the vibrational frequency of the Earth. And all these whale and dolphin killing projects are designed to put a stop to their raising the vibrational frequency of the Earth. So all the more reason to put a stop to that agenda. But is that just some random picture that just happened, or is there something about dolphins and whales, for that matter, that you see that caused you to put that picture up there on your website?
Well, Andrew, you're causing me to think. I like the picture because it was just a wonderful day, and I was told that the 2 dolphins there are a mother-daughter combination that live together. And I was asked, do you want the dolphins to kiss you? And I said, well, yeah, I'd love to have a dolphin kiss me. So what they do, of course, is they don't put the lips on me, but their chin just under the mouth is very kind of soft, like a tennis ball or something. And so the dolphins were able to kiss me on each of my cheeks simultaneously. I just have to say, it was so much fun. And I had a Danish friend. He and I are good buddies. He was swimming, and he said, no, you keep those dolphins away from me. I don't want them. And after they kissed me, he said, hey, I want them to come over and kiss me too. So, at any rate, it was just such a beautiful day, and the dolphins are smart. They're bribable because the dolphin trainers give them fish and make them do anything, fish to eat, and trainable. So, and probably like you, I read for years about experiments with dolphins and their intelligence, their communication skills, and this mother-daughter combination that I was swimming with. I mean, they just seemed like pets. That is to say, they have personalities and you can interact with them. And I can see why, since the 1970s now, we've been thinking about whales and dolphins as other intelligent species like Homo sapiens, who communicate, who have families, and they don't have technology, but they got a lot of other things in common with with Homo sapiens, and so they are precious. And I think the human race does have a responsibility for protecting them. As to whether or not their sounds really have a metaphysical significance, I don't. Let me just say I don't know about that. You may know more about that, Andrew, than I do, and it is plausible because I've heard, as you probably have too, microphones underwater in a school of dolphins. Man, you can hear that hum, just like human beings at a baseball park. There's this kind of onward noise, and you can't even call it background noise because it's deliberate noise that's intelligent in character. And so I wonder if dolphin and whale communication could have an effect that goes way beyond their own communities. I can see why you're asking that. But, Andrew, I'm not an expert on everything. I can talk about anything, but I can't talk definitively about it.
Well, it's a heartwarming picture there, seeing the dolphins kissing you, so I thought I'd bring that up. Okay, but switching gears, let's get astrology mixed into this, because religion and the whole Pluto and Capricorn thing, I was talking about this with my guest last Tuesday, John Nicholson, about how, for those that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this, Pluto and Capricorn, as it goes, the Pluto is going to be in Capricorn, and this is not a sidereal astrology. In sidereal astrology, Pluto is in Sagittarius, but in tropical mainstream astrology, Pluto is in Capricorn, and it's going to be there until about some point in 2023. And as the readings go, Pluto in Capricorn symbolizes the destruction of everything that stands in the way of humanity's progress. And it has been said that one of the last things that will fall in order to help humanity prosper and move on at the end of the Pluto and Capricorn thing is religion. Now, I personally would prefer not to see the fall of religion. Now, I've seen, there's a popular logo, many you may see on bumper stickers, like cars with their bumper stickers. One of the popular bumper stickers says coexist, and it has all the religious logos in it. I think that's a pretty significant message to show how all the religions can coexist. And I mentioned earlier that some would say that religions, the only thing they're good for is brainwashing and suppressing consciousness and all that, and that's why they should be gotten rid of. But I personally, if Pluto and Capricorn does help expand humanity's consciousness, I would certainly prefer religions coexist and humanity coexisting, regardless of their differences in spiritual opinion and such, rather than see the demise of religion entirely. So, astrologically speaking, Pluto and Capricorn and how it will affect religions in the coming years for the benefit of humanity. Anything you have to say about this, specifically from a Christian standpoint? I guess from your point of view, because you're
yes, Andrew, you have a way of striking a match and lighting a whole string of firecrackers with each one of your questions, and that's really got a lot of bangs in it. Yeah, that's your job. You're going to figure out what reality is here. Astrology, there are a couple ways of looking at it. One is you could look at it as kind of a secular science, but if you look at it religiously, I'd say it's probably the single largest religion in the world. It doesn't have a church, to be sure, but you find it on every continent with the exception of Antarctica, unless, some of the penguins are astrologers. I don't know. But it is interesting that astrology is everywhere and still very powerful in East Asia and the subcontinent of Asia. And as you know, it appears in the Bible, etc. So, for the foreseeable future, we're going to be thinking astrologically. So this period of time now in which Pluto appears in Capricorn, I noticed your words were, we're going to sweep out of the way those things that retard progress. And one of the things that really resists progress is religion. Now, what I didn't hear you say that usually comes up here is that religion is violent. Oh, yeah, everybody believes that religion is old-fashioned, out-of-date, dogmatic, and prevents us from having progressive thought. But usually there's a corollary, and that is that narrow-minded religion is responsible for violence, and if we can get past the violence of religion, then we could usher in an era of peace. So I don't know if that's part of your scenario or not. This set of beliefs mushroomed very largely in December of 2006. And it's not as though these beliefs weren't around prior to that, they were. But what happened in November of 2006 was the midterm elections in the U.S., and George Bush, who prior to that had really had the solid support of the Christian right in the U.S., and that broke apart. And it seems to me as though the Republican Party could no longer rely on this political bastion. And so by December and January of that year, we had an explosion of books and TV shows and everything on atheism. And one of the arguments in that explosion was that religion is violent and we need to get beyond religion. So even though in your remarks about coexist, by the way, in Berkeley, I see there are a lot of bumper stickers in Berkeley, as you can imagine. After all, we're lefter than down, you know. If it is in fact the case that religion is the source of violence in the world, well, then we don't want those religions at all. We might as well get rid of them. The worst thing that could happen is they'd get together and they'd, do even more violence. So I need to question the premise. Is it really the case that religion is the source of violence? And I tend to think that religion through history is just one more human institution, and human violence is a constant, and religion is no more responsible for human violence than any other stream of institutionalized human life. It is in fact the case historically that a lot of people justify their violence, especially going to war or something like that, by appeal to religious claims. But that's quite different than saying, well, religion caused the violence. And so let's go back to an earlier part of our conversation where I said, well, there are two ways of looking at religion. One is you can look at the churches. You got the Presbyterian Church, you got the Baptist Church, or what have you. You can say there's religion over there. And if you don't go to church on Sunday, you don't touch religion. Okay. But the second definition is to look at the religious behavior of people regardless of their language or their symbols, and then take a look at violence. And what do you get? Well, you get pseudo-religion stuff. Let's take a look at the senior George Bush wanting to go to war in Iraq. Now, the people of the United States, they didn't want a war, for crying out loud, but George Bush had to get over there, pardon me, because there was oil under that land. And so how can he persuade America to go to war? Well, what we'll do is we'll paint a picture of Saddam Hussein. Remember, he called him Saddam. Saddam Hussein as evil. We'll call him Hitler. We all know Hitler is bad. And so he kind of whips up the American go-to-war spirit because we're responsible to God and destiny in order to wipe out evil. So we sent U.S. troops over there in order to kick some Iraqi butt. As soon as he regained control of the oil fields, he stopped the war. By that time, I mean, once you got the oil, you don't need to do anything to Saddam Hussein. And Halliburton, great Texas company, made billions and billions and billions of U.S. dollars by putting out the oil fires and establishing an infrastructure. Well, of course, Saddam Hussein eventually regained control of the oil fields, and so in 2003, another George Bush goes back and does the same thing. What I want to say is that the taking America to war by the two George Bushes was a form of religion. It's not a church. They didn't ask the Catholics to bless the war. No, it was kind of turning America into a religion with religious fire and brimstone, or political fire and brimstone, to do semi-religious things. So here you have America launching two wars. The hidden agenda is to get control of oil prices. Remember, these guys come from Texas. They don't come from any of the other 49 states. And it's America doing what is right. And if 300,000 Iraqis die violent deaths in the second of those two wars, well, after all, it was... Well, at any rate, these days we think of it as a mistake, I guess, but at the time you couldn't say so. So here's what I want to say. I want to say, if you press the case that religion is violent, what I think is a more accurate way is to say, we human beings are going to do violence no matter what. And the function of religious zeal is to get us all to act together so that we can expand the violence and make it bigger. You know, neither George Bush offered to go over and do a sword fight with Saddam Hussein. No, they had to take tens of thousands of troops over there. And so this whipping up of the national spirit to commit violence on the other side of the world, I call a religious phenomenon. But I don't want to say religion is responsible for violence. I want to say religion is a tool that violent leaders are going to use in order to unite the people. There was no church that wanted to go to war against Saddam Hussein. There was two presidents in this case who kind of wanted to do that. So I guess my bottom line is I think the human race is violent, and when it comes to going to war, religious structures are definitely employed in order to justify going to war, but they're not associated necessarily with a specific religion or church or something. And of course, ISIS looks like an exception to that rule, and I will grant that. So it's, those people say religion is violent. I mean, there are some really good examples of it, but I would like to put that in a much larger basket and say, you know what, I think the human race is violent. So getting back now to Pluto in Capricorn, I have a hunch that eliminating religion in the sense of getting rid of the churches, or, you're probably not, I don't know how to bomb the churches, but if you're going to get rid of the churches, you still won't get rid of either violence or religion, because it'll appear again sui generously just as soon as somebody kind of wants to go to war or perpetrate some other kind of violence. So unless Pluto and Capricorn have some secret that I don't know, I expect that 3-4 years from now, the global landscape will look pretty much like it is right now. Now, how'd you like that, Andrew, for pessimism?
I don't think it's necessarily pessimistic as much as it is a prediction. There could be some dash of optimism in there, so I don't think you need to strictly say that you're being pessimistic when you say things won't change. I mean, things may look the same, but in regards to a subconscious aspect, that's definitely something worth considering. Just so you know, there's only about 60 seconds left on the live feed, so I guess in the last minute of live feed time, why don't you give out your website and how people can find you, and then I'll finish up by telling you the same thing I tell everybody.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Andrew. I love jumping into the deep. I love pursuing reality. It's been a lot of fun talking with you. My website for your listeners is tedstimelytake.com. And there are a lot of good resources on science and religion there, plus some of my video blogs. So come to tedstimelytake.com and we'll continue the deep conversation.
Yes, there were some things on there that I wasn't able to bring up, but again, people can look at that on their own time. And since this show is in seconds, I'll tell you the same thing I tell all my guests, and that is that you're a fascinating individual. I loved having you on, and I guess if you ever need some sort of a medium to get the word out or something, you're more than welcome to give me a buzz, and maybe I could give you like a half an hour to an hour to do a special show where you could talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. However, as far as me contacting you or any of my other previous guests goes, ever since I started doing this show about 3 years ago, I've always tried to follow a philosophy of trying to get as many different guests on my show as possible before giving any one specific guest double dips, because I felt that that was always the fairest, most impartial, and the most informative way of doing a show that seeks to expose the true and false nature of reality. So please understand, if I don't ask you to come on my show again, that's only because I need to give thousands of other fascinating individuals like you a chance to have some glory. But if you want to come on, feel free to give a buzz. I can certainly honor that, like I did with John Nicholson last week when he came on the show a second time. And if you ever have any more YouTube videos, I guess I'll watch them, and I'll look to see if any of your books are available in the public library. And even if they're not, maybe I'll spend some money to buy it, because you seem interesting enough to spend some money on your books.
Great talking to you, Andrew. Best wishes.
Best wishes to you. And good luck, Ted. Dr. Peters. Take care. Later. All right, folks, that is the end of this show. Next week, I will be having Richard Casero on the show. Who recommended him? Was it Sean Cohen? I'm not sure. Someone recommended him. Maybe it was Sean Cohen who recommended him. She loved him. Well, she's not in the chat room anymore, so she can't hear me say that. But I will have Richard Casero on the show next week, 9/21 from 6 to 8. We'll be talking about secret societies that have a tie to ancient wisdom, among other things. But that's the end of this show. This is Andrew Fisher signing off from Nature of Reality Radio. Namaste, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your trek throughout infinite consciousness.